Newsflash! You have the opportunity to take control of your life. The question, one of the questions, is do you? The real question is, will you? What I know is you can control the response to a situation. What I know is you can control the response to the situation. What does that mean? That means that you control how you respond to whatever situation is currently taking place. But what I want you to understand, to take that a step further, when you are out of control, you make reckless decisions. Your reckless decisions influence your erratic behaviors. Your reckless decisions shape your goals you make, or they're the lack of goals you make. Your reckless decisions allow you to create a false sense of who you think you are. If you don't know by now, my name is Oliver Green, and I am your host of Let's Talk Dirty. Start off with a scripture. Romans 12:2. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Mindset. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. What does it say? It says you have to change how you think, and you have to change how you think based upon the world's view and change it to what it is that God says. Because what God has for you is good, pleasing, and perfect. I think sometimes one of the biggest problems that we face is we face ourselves when we have a problem. We are so in our heads when we have a problem, and we make moves that can change our lives. Something happens and we try to solve it in our natural mind. And a lot of times the solutions that we come up with are based upon our experiences that we've had. How many of you know, if you've had a rough childhood, if you've had a rough adult life as to wherever you are, the experiences that you have very well may not solve the problem that will keep you out of trouble. I heard a quote, and it was, the environment shaped him. I don't know where I heard it from, but listen to something. The environment shaped him. So your environment, as you may know, can dictate a lot of times what it is you do, how you respond to situations, what you feel or what you think a situation is supposed to look like. Let me prove it to you. How many of you know someone who has made a post on social media and it's drama written? It got drama written all over it. You read it and you're like, oh boy. A couple things may happen. Based upon the type of person that you are, you may sit back and be like, oh, I'm here for all the comments. Let me get my popcorn and just sit back and relax and see how this unfolds. But let me bring it closer to home for you. How many of you have been mad at someone and took to social media to talk about it? Now, depending on how bold you are, how many acquaintances you have, I think dictates how strong you go at it. But most of the time, I'll say 80% of the time, we don't really tell who the person is. We tell what the situation is, and if you know the people, then you be like, oh, I know what they're talking about. We don't really out them like that. But better yet, how many of you have been mad at friend A and then went to friend B and C and dropped some of the juicy dirt that friend A swore you to secrecy not to tell anybody? I'll wait. I know I've done it. But you don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to respond. But the fact that it's there, I've planted that seed. I already know the answer. Remember when, and this is how it popped off. I'm not supposed to say anything, but. And you give all the information that person told you not to say. Same thing. Drama written all over it. So I'm going somewhere, ride with me. I've been in my current relationship for 20 years. I've been married for 15 of those 20 years. Now, when we first got together, I was very big on this saying, not to tell anybody what was going on in my house. Where did I get that from? My mama, my grandmama, whatever was going on, however they were raised in that moment. Because they were, boy, you better not go out of here and tell nobody what's going on in here. And the reason that I said that was probably because I was doing something that may not have been acceptable, or I was conducting myself in such a way that I didn't want to be judged. But even with that, so you see how the mask, check out Mask Mandate, you should have been here to listen to it. But you see how the mask that we wear, how it begins to be formed, because you're worried about what you look like on the outside. You look like what people are going to think of you. So see how wearing the mask, it shapes how we think, because we begin to think in regards to somebody else. So we're worried about how we look on the outside, because they is sometimes can be the downfall to us, what they see and what we think they are going to see or say about us. These two things are not the same, because one of them is we're worried about how they look at us, and then the other one is we're worried about what they're going to think and what they're going to think about us. So it's the think in this. It's the think in the see. I think because we've not dealt with some of the mess that we have, some of our daddy issues that have been presented, that we're so jaded, we're so worried about what society says is normal that we forget what I said from Romans 2. God's will for us is good, pleasing, and perfect. So if God doesn't judge us, if God's not worried about what we look like or how it's going to look, why are we worried about people that really don't care about us? I mean, it's just a question. I think it's a valid, fair question. When we are trying to live like or model ourselves after the Joneses, whoever the Joneses are, it creates it creates a barrier as to who I think we truly can become, or who we were created to do a thing. And because we're so worried about what other people say, that the thing that we're created to do, it doesn't feel natural because we're not accepted. I know I'm talking to somebody. You may tune off. Don't do it. Stick with me. Because a lot of times we need to hear it. I don't know about you, but I'm a parent. And as a parent, to all my parents, come a little closer. To all my parents, you can say the same thing to your child. And you can say it till you're blue in the face. You can say it, you can reinforce it, you can give scripture, you can go to the prophet Google, you can get your auntie, your kid's not going to listen. And it's not until that other person says the same exact thing, but it's coming from a different person because they see us a certain way. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go and you have to change who you are, but I have said, if we continue to move forward and parent the way that we were parent with this current generation, we're going to be frustrated. We're going to stress ourselves to death. Just saying. When we don't deal with the inner mess that we have going on, what I was saying, we tend to, it's like we get a complex. And because we feel that we haven't matched up, or we don't meet the standards of what society says we should be, we don't want anybody to know what's going on the inside. Now, I could be talking about the inside of your house or the inside of you. But if you were the church, then I'm talking about you on the inside. Let that breathe. So the tough thing is when we don't want anybody to know what's going on in our house, is that when we have to address it, when we have to have the tough conversations, or when we have to deal with the tough decisions or the tough, when we have to address actions or decisions, it can become very, very stressful. It could bring anxiety. Told you, just because Mental Health Awareness Month is over doesn't mean we're going to stop talking about what happens. If we can't address an issue and we don't feel that we can discuss the issue with anybody else, it brings anxiety. It can bring depression. So, side note, if you don't have anybody to talk to and you have a job, I'm gonna need you to go and reach out to your human resources department and find out if you have a program called EAP. The EAP program, most jobs have it. It's free counseling. They usually give you 5 to 6 sessions in reference to what your particular issue is. Not getting paid. It's not a public service announcement. Just, I want you to be informed that there are ways for you to get assistance in talking to somebody about what's going on, particularly men. We don't talk to anybody because we are worried about what somebody else is going to say, how somebody else is going to perceive, how people are going to look at us. Couldn't get that word out. But then it requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to deal with the tough things that we have not dealt with. It requires us to take or address the mask that we have on. And that can be tough, especially if it's things that we haven't dealt with and they're from our childhood. If you in your 40s and you still haven't dealt with your daddy issues from when you were 10, oh, it's tough. You got 30 years, you got 40 years, 30, 40 years of stuff that you have put in a box. You've compartmentalized that, and it continues to plague you. It continues to hold you back. It continues to create a wedge in any relationship that you have. Why? Because you don't know how to effectively release what it is that is building inside of you. And I'd venture to say, I'd even put some money on it, that when you get angry, you may not have exploded and you may have held it in. But then there have been those times that the smallest thing, unrelated to whatever is going on, has tripped you, has triggered your anger, and it has set everybody off because they're like, I don't understand what is going on. Now, I'm probably just talking about me because nobody listening to this, because nobody listens to me. Nobody listening to this has ever experienced any of that. So, Oliver, you have experienced that. You have been so angry and you've held it in, and somebody has done something, bumped you, touched you, said something, and you have given them the business and you were wrong. Now, those that are still tuned in, insert your name. Now I ask you, where has that gotten you? Where has that gotten you today?